Okay, so Zero Hedge, will America's trade policy end up destroying the dollar? Authored by Alistair McLeod of goldmoney.com. Before I even start, I haven't read it yet. All I think of when I hear this, I don't know what the reason will be for the dollar problems, but Trump wants a lot cheaper dollar. He's told the Fed he wants negative interest rates and a cheap dollar. And Q has said, gold, yes, we have the gold, and it will destroy the Federal Reserve. So if this is the reason, that's the reason, it was partially this, doesn't really matter. However, the guy makes a good point here, and you can kind of see, well, that certainly isn't going to, not matter at all, I guess. So it's worth talking about. America's tariffs against China are already showing signs of undermining the global economy and will create a funding crisis for the federal government when it leads to foreigners no longer buying U.S. Treasury debt and selling down their existing dollar holdings. A subversive attempt by America to divert global portfolio investment from China by destabilizing Hong Kong will force China into a plan B to fund its infrastructure plans, which could involve actively selling down her dollar reserves and hastening the introduction of a new crypto-based trade settlement currency. Now, granted, we heard recently that a gold-backed currency thing cryptocurrency between China, Russia, those guys was coming. Remote viewing guys, crypto viewing, I talked a little about this. I have a 33rd degree Freemason contact that I posted a couple things on my Patreon so far. Hadn't had any updates since then, but he feels very strongly that that's a real possibility, which is interesting. The U.S. budget deficit will then be financed entirely by monetary inflation. Furthermore, the turn of the credit cycle, made more destructive by trade tariffs, is driving the global and U.S. economy into a slump, further accelerating all indebted governments' dependency on inflationary financing. End result is America's trade policies have been instrumental in hastening the end of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, ultimately leading to its destruction. And by the way, it's only been, I think, a couple of weeks. I heard Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, talking about the days of the U.S. dollar are near, like it's almost over. Why would he say that all of a sudden? Oh, and that's right, Russia, China, gold-backed crypto, huh? However, QAnon, we definitely have the gold, and gold will destroy the Fed. For almost 2 years, President Trump has imposed tariffs on imported Chinese goods. He's advertised his tactics as hardball from a tough president who knows the art of the deal, taking his business acumen and applying it to foreign affairs. He even proudly described himself as a tariff man. His opening gambit was to impose tariffs on some goods to get lower leverage over the Chinese, or not lower, but to get leverage over the Chinese, with the threat that if they didn't cooperate, then further tariffs would be introduced. The Chinese declined to be cowed by threats, including or introducing tariffs themselves on U.S. imports, particularly agricultural products, to bring pressure to bear in turn on President Trump. Egged on by his trade advisor Peter Navarro and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, Trump has continued to intensify his tariff policies, oblivious to the damage being done to the global economy. Putting aside Panglossian statistics, both America and China are now heading for a recession that is increasingly likely to deepen significantly. America's consumer-driven economy is yet to reflect much of a slowdown, though producer countries dependent on either or both economies, such as Germany, are already descending into a manufacturing slump. China's GDP is registering a growth rate of about 6%, low by Chinese standards, but being no more than a money total. This is just a reflection of the quantity of money still being pumped into the Chinese economy by the authorities. Let's see, it's kind of a long article. It's quite long. I don't know. I don't know if you want me to read you this whole thing. This is a long one. The U.S. deep state strategy is stuck in the Cold War era U.S. government's developing funding crisis. The statistics in Table 1 summarize America's financial problem. This is from 2000 to 2019. Balance of payments and federal government borrowing from 2000 to 2019. Accumulated federal budget deficit, 11.4 trillion. Accumulated balance and payments deficit, 10.799 or 10.8 trillion. Difference, 673 billion, basically. These figures tell us that since the turn of the millennium, 94% of America's accumulated budget deficit is covered by the accumulated balance of payments deficit. In other words, almost all the budget deficit is financed directly or indirectly by inward capital flows, and very little can be attributed to genuine demand for U.S. Treasuries by American savers. This result is to be expected since it reflects on accounting identity at the national level. The accounting identity tells us that unless there is an increase in national savings, a budget deficit will be financed by capital arising from the trade deficit. We can also say the money to cover the budget deficit in the absence of capital inflows, and an increase in savings can only be through monetary inflation. In other words, through the debasement of the currency substituting for genuine savings. So, of course, debased currency, devalued currency, negative interest rates. I'm telling you, be ready to hear these things. If Trump's telling the Federal Reserve, this is what I want you to do. Hey, by the way, let's have a private meeting in my little private office over here in the White House, which wasn't even broadcasted anywhere. It came out days and days later that this happened. The Fed head and I think Treasury Secretary and Trump, I think it was those three guys. And they're talking about negative rates, cheaper dollar. Come on, what do you think is going to happen? And someone brought up a good point. Well, what happens to stable coins, Joe? You know, in the cryptocurrency world, all these different stable coins that are stable to a US dollar, what happens with those? Well, if the dollar is devalued by half, I think I'm here to tell you, the stable coins will probably follow suit. Whatever the value of a dollar is the value of a stable coin. So, you know, if you're not in a stable coin, you would think whatever crypto you're in is going to be a lot more valuable. And then if you go into a stable coin after the announcement, well, you'll get more stable coin back than you would have before, which also means the price of the cryptocurrency you're holding went up pretty significantly just by an announcement of the dollar being devalued. So the other thing here is, all these foreigners, they're buying our treasuries, all the foreigners, man. The Federal Reserve has stepped in many times to buy our own treasuries, which is odd, right? Because the federal government has to borrow its own money into existence from the Fed, at interest, of course. So the government has to create treasury bonds, 2 year, 1 year, 30 year, whatever the hell it is, 10 year. And okay, you need 10 billion. Okay, well, we need 10 billion in treasury bonds issued and sold. Okay, done. Okay, here's your money. What happens if those treasuries don't sell? Then you don't get the money. The government doesn't get the $10 billion. So what happens in those cases? Well, the Federal Reserve, the same one that's issuing the money and telling the government, you got to sell these and then we'll give you the money. Sell the bonds and we'll give you the money. You know, if you sell 10 billion bonds, we'll give you $10 billion in dollars. Oh, we only had 2 billion show up. No one else wants, 8 billion remaining. No one wants to buy our treasuries. Oh, that's okay. We, the Federal Reserve, will step in and do it. Now, how asinine is that? You're the one telling them they've got to go sell these out there in the real world. Hey, I walked to snow and through snow to school of 2 miles when I was your age. You go and sell these to the rest of the world if you want this money. The rest of the world doesn't want it. Okay, never mind. We'll finance it. We'll just print more money, add it to our balance sheet, whatever that means. We'll just put it on our balance sheet at the Fed, and we'll buy those treasury notes from you. This has been going on, by the way, for years. This has been happening. And again, well, why is it? How could this happen? And it's still somewhat stable. Like how? Not even somewhat. It's pretty darn stable. No big crash in the economy. No big crash in some kind of certain numbers. Stocks, again, record highs. So again, somebody Get Bull Pony over here ASAP. Get Bull Pony over here. Stat. Where's that crash? Damn it. I want to crash. I want the whole crash. Presents and prizes and crashes of all shapes and sizes. Give it to me now. Why? Because you went short? No, I don't play the stock market. I only play with crypto. Thank you. But again, should have had a crash. Didn't have a crash. Should have had a dollar crisis. Didn't have a dollar crisis. All the data is there that says there is, but there isn't. Up is down, left is right, north is south, everything's backwards. And our little system is just somehow chugging along. Not exactly the kind of system I'd want to be sitting on a train. Not unlike this train. That's busted. They've put a hole in that. They've covered it with tape. They put a freaking bandage over that thing. Whoa, that little arm that runs the train, you know, the old school train wheels. You guys duct tape that together? That's holding? Oh. How about the toilet? Toilets don't work either. Hang your butt outside the window and let her loose. And God forbid if anyone behind you has their window open. Sorry about that. That wind's going to, you know. But the train somehow was going down those damn tracks. And there's a few of us on the train saying, you know, guys, how the hell is this train not functioning right now? Well, I don't know. That's broken. That's broken. That's not working. That's a lie. The temperature's completely wrong. All these gauges are like telling us everything's okay in the train, but we can see, I can smell, there's a massive oily, like something's wrong. But again, the train's still chugging. So do you have the belief or the hope in the faith that whoever's been in charge of this whole thing, all these pieces to this giant puzzle, they'll be able to just continue on tweaking the knobs and toot toot toot, and or is there a point where they just lose control? Where we've done all we could do, we went way farther than we ever have, right? A fiat currency has a typical lifespan of like, what, 41, 42 years, something like that? We went off the gold standard in 71, 81, 91, 2001, 2010 or 11. That's 40 years there. We're 2020. It's 50 years. How the hell did we get past that? The average is, well, of course, the average. Some fiat currencies died before. Some fiat currencies died a little longer. Maybe 60 years. But again, the average was 41, I think. 39, 40, 41, somewhere around there. I don't remember the exact number. Here we are at 50 years. But again, look at, we have this massive $22, $23 trillion debt. All this crap that's unaccounted for. What's your name? Catherine Austin Fitz. We've got another something trillion, 20 trillion that's unaccounted for on top of the 20 trillion that we know about. This has to get dealt with at some point, people. But at the same time, could it go another 10 years? God, it might. 5 years? Maybe, yeah, why not? But when the day comes, when it's dealt with, what do you have in your possession that gets you in a good spot when that day does come? You got gold and silver? You got cryptos? Is there anything else you might want that, you know, like I'm talking about surviving financially, not necessarily, I need food and shelter. You know, I'm not just talking financial, surviving, paying your bills, getting food on the table, just basic financial stuff. Gold and silver has always shined throughout history during times like this, when things like this would happen. However, we got a new gold and silver. It's called cryptocurrency. So would it hurt if we had both? Because we're not so sure which one's going to be better. I mean, I think crypto is probably going to go crazy. But not to say that gold and silver won't too at some point. Webbot has talked about that $600 silver number for a long time. Like so many times, he's like, it's going to happen at some point. It's like baked in the cake. It will happen. The timing may be way off, but it's in the data for so long. It's there. We're going to see huge numbers at some point. So whatever, you know, what's silver? 15, 16 bucks right now? Silver price. 17.10. $17. Another gauge or thermometer that's being manually tweaked and rigged at all costs so that you don't look anywhere else. Everything's fine. Your dollar's fine. Don't go buy gold and silver and look, they're not moving. Leave them alone. I'm the kind of guy that wants to do what I'm told not to do because there's probably a reason. So anyways, take care.